This video is going to give you an overview of the history of the modern atom. So as you go through, just as like in other videos, what I would like you to do is follow along on your notes page and fill in the blanks with the corresponding or the correct terminology. So before we can look at the history of the modern atom, we first need to understand what the modern atomic model consists of. So the modern atom consists of protons, electrons, and neutrons. The protons have a positive charge and they're found in the nucleus. The electrons have a negative charge and they're found outside the nucleus. They're found outside the nucleus right there with the yellow circle. And then the neutrons are also found inside the nucleus as well, and they do not have a charge at all. So they have a neutral charge. The electrons form what is called an electron cloud, so outside of the nucleus. So the first modern scientist to have make a theory about the atoms is John Dalton. So what he said is he believed, or he built on the idea that all matter was made up of small particles, and those particles were called atoms. He reconsidered the idea that each type of matter had its own mass and its own size, and those that type of matter, each of the type of matter was what he called elements. He discovered that those elements could be combined to create new substances, or those atoms, could combine to create new substances. The next important or significant scientist to make discovery about the atom and change what the atom, the theory of the model of the atom, what it would look like, was JT Thompson. So he theorized that each atom was made up of smaller particles. So the particles that he discovered were the electrons and the protons, and he thought they were scattered throughout the atom. So his model is what's known as the plum pudding model. And the reason why it's plum pudding, although many of us don't eat plum pudding, the reason is it was based around the idea of what plum pudding is. So the idea that the electrons shown here, the green circles, the negative charged particles, they would be like the raisins in the pudding, and the positively charged particles, or the matter, was like the pudding part of the plum pudding. Rutherford was the next significant scientist to make a significant theory about what the model of the atom would look like. So his model is probably one of the most familiar models when we talk about science, or when you see anything in science. So like the Big Bang Theory, for instance, on the show, on its opening, it uses the Rutherford model at the beginning as part of its opening, because it deals with science, it deals with atoms. So what does he theorized? He theorized that each atom contained electrons and protons, just as other scientists did before, and they had spaces between them. He thought that the protons were in the nucleus, and the electrons were around the nucleus. The final scientist that we're going to explore is Bohr, or Niels Bohr. His model is not the final model or the most modern model. However, it is the model that we in grade 9 need to understand, and it best explains, or helps us explain, why matter reacts the way that it does. Again, there are other scientists that have continued to explore the theory of the model, or theory of the atom, and it has changed over the years. But Niels Bohr is the one that we're going to end off on. So he theorized that electrons were arranged in electron clouds. So those are seen, those are seen here. So these are the electron clouds. They're different rings around the nucleus. He believed that when electrons gain or lose energy, they move from energy levels when they do so. So as you take chemistry further on, you'll understand a little bit more about why these electrons are important and how those electrons help create bonds. We talked a little bit about the Bohr model according to the periodic table and the electrons that were found on the outer shells. Those will help us understand how different elements bond to make different compounds. So now that you have a very brief overview of the history of the modern atom, going from just simple matter, everything's made up of matter, to a little bit deeper understanding of, there's some particles in there, to, okay, the electrons are circle, or they go around the nucleus, and then to the modern belief of the electron clouds. Now that you have that brief overview, what you're going to do is you're going to watch a video called The Crash Course, The History of the Atomic Chemistry, and it's going to go quite deeper into a discussion of the history of the modern atom. So, what I would like you to focus on when you're watching this video is an understanding of what each scientist brought to the model of the atom, and what kind of experiments did they do to provide backup or evidence that their model was correct. Again, as you go along, there's a fill-in-the-blanks notes just to help you because this is a more complex version. You will have to stop at certain points and stop and think and jot down the key points of what each scientist brought to the history of the atomic model.